Here on the Six Screens Telenetwork, we're glad that you could join us today for the Christian Court. There's a lot of peculiar questions that we'd love to have answered. You know, when we were in the Watchtower, one really couldn't question the Watchtower, or you might question the Watchtower, but you wouldn't question their answers. So we had to do exactly what the Watchtower dictated us to do. The question: the Old Testament law commanded the Israelites not to engage in interracial marriage. That can be found at Deuteronomy 7, 3 through 4, 3 and 4, I should say. Now, the question is here, should a Christian only marry one in their race?
As far as the question of race, I would say there are no races among human beings. You won't find the concept of race in the Bible. It's something that was created by people as a classification system in a taxonomy of animals. Officially, a race is a subgroup of a species that can't interbreed with other races of the same species. Now, all of us humans are one species. There are no subspecies. There are no races according to the official taxonomic system. So there is no such thing as race. You won't find it in the Bible. It's a taxonomic system, and it's somewhat Darwinian, the idea of race that we have today, that there are white people and black people as if they are different people groups, but they're not. In fact, since you don't find this in the Bible, what do you find? Well, go to Acts chapter 17, verse 26. Paul is talking to the men of Athens, and he says this of God. He says, God made the world and everything in it. Verse 26, and he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, etc. Now, in the Greek, it doesn't say one man, it says one, and some of the manuscripts say he made of one blood every nation of men. Notice it doesn't say he made every race. There is no race. And even this concept is not in the Bible. And all from one blood, which means we're all descended from Adam and Eve. I mean, that's obvious from reading the Bible in the book of Genesis. We're all human. We're all Adam and Eve. There are no races among people. Now, we use this word race, which I said is kind of a Darwinian idea, that there are higher races and lesser races. That's what the Darwinists came up with. Now, we know that that's not true. And even with modern genetics and DNA, we know that there are no races. But this concept was used as a scientific justification for racism. They saw black people as a lower race. Of course, the white guys who invented this thought of themselves as the best. You know, the Nation of Islam people and some others have the concept of a mad scientist who was a black man who created the white people as an evil race. But anyway, all this is just invented by men. What we read in the Bible, we're all from Adam and Eve. We're all one family, one species, and our DNA and our genetics demonstrate that. So God says we're all from one blood and everything. Now, so you can marry any other human being, just don't marry outside the human race. Don't marry a non-human. But if you were to ask then, well, what are these things that we call races? I would say this: look at the dog breeds. All the dogs, the domesticated dogs, belong to one species, Canis lupus, and they can all interbreed or hybridize. You might need a lab and a test tube, but you can breed them all together. Yet the different kinds of dogs look very different, right? Bulldogs and greyhounds and mastiffs and chihuahuas, they all look very different within their breeder groups. Why? Because of inbreeding. The breeders take dogs with similar characters and breed them together, and then they have a pedigree, which is basically a narrow family line. And humans do that too, because we live next to each other. We tend to find our mates from someone who lives in the same culture or has a similar background to you. That makes for good compatibility. So we also tend to interbreed with people who look like us, and then we all end up looking the same within any of these pedigrees. So that's what the Darwinists, the early Darwinists, decided, oh, that must be a race. And of course they were wrong. We know genetically that's not true. So you just remember that the name of Charles Darwin's book, On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Favored Races, in the struggle for life. So the racism was built right into it from the get-go. The whites who invented this thought that we are the favored race, or we're going to be, and the brown skin, the darker people, the ones that we think are primitive, they must be lower races. And also this was used to justify anti-Semitism, hating Jews and claiming that they were a lesser race. So anyway, all that is just to say there is no such thing as interracial marriage, where there are no races in the human species. We're all one. Marry another human.
Well, that is a really fascinating discussion. I never heard that. So that no, I'm not. You taught me something. Scott. I never, but it makes sense. I certainly wasn't sitting here and saying that's crazy. That makes a lot of sense to me when you stop and think about it. But we see so many issues today with racism. We see so many issues today that one race is better than the other, but there's no race better than the other. I mean, we all came from the same Adam and Eve. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, very good explanation, both of you guys. We really appreciate it. So that's the answer. So the answer would be: should a Christian marry out of their race? Let's look at the word race loosely. I mean, really, when you think about it, yes, the question is yes, a Christian can marry out of their race.